Ferrari just removed the most innovative part of their car, not because it stopped working, not because the FIA banned it. They removed it on purpose before the most important race before the summer break, and the weather forecast for Spa this weekend is why that decision could completely backfire. The flick-tail mode is the exhaust-blown winglet Ferrari pioneered during pre-season testing in Bahrain. Hot exhaust gases directed onto the lower section of the rear wing, creating extra downforce at the back of the car and improving stability through corners. It worked so well that rival teams immediately tried to copy it. They couldn't because Ferrari had designed the entire rear of the SF26 around the device, moving the differential as far back as physically possible to exploit the rules. The FIA loved it so much, they've already banned it for 2027. Ferrari's technical director Loic Serra just approved removing it for Spa. The decision cost them 7 horsepower. They made it anyway. And the Spa weather forecast, rain forecast across all 3 days, is why that decision may not survive until Sunday. Start with what the FTM actually does, because most of the coverage has described it without explaining why it matters on a weekend-by-weekend basis. The device directs exhaust gases onto the rear wing. At medium and high-speed circuits, Barcelona, Silverstone, the kind of corners where the SF26's chassis strength is the team's biggest asset, the extra rear downforce makes the car planted, predictable, and fast. Hamilton's race at Barcelona, the FTM was on. Leclerc's Silverstone win, the FTM was on. Every competitive result Ferrari has produced this season has had this device generating downforce through the corners. Spa is different. From La Source through Eau Rouge and up the Kemmel Straight to Les Combes, cars run at full throttle for 1.8 kilometers with almost no braking event to recharge the battery, and the FTM's downforce gain comes with a drag penalty. On the Kemmel Straight, that drag costs lap time. Ferrari's engineers measured it at 7 horsepower of drag loss, and at 330 kilometers per hour, 7 horsepower on the longest full throttle section in Formula 1 is not recoverable in the corners. Beganovic ran the SF26 without the FTM in Austria FP1. Ferrari gathered data across 2 separate run plans, with and without the device, and gave Loic Serra exactly what he needed to make the Spa call. The data convinced him. FTM off for Belgium. Visual weather forecast graphic. Spa-Francorchamps. Rain symbols across Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then the rain forecast arrived, and it isn't just a chance of showers. The current forecast shows rain on all 3 days of the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And here is the problem Ferrari's engineers are now sitting with. Without the FTM, the SF26 is running one of its lowest downforce configurations of the season. In dry conditions, that is fast on the straights and acceptably stable through Eau Rouge. In wet conditions, without the FTM's downforce at the rear, the car will have significantly less stability through a corner that is genuinely dangerous when the track is slippery. If it rains at Spa, and right now the forecast says it will, Ferrari may have to refit the FTM at the last minute and absorb the drag penalty they just tried to eliminate. The data session Beganovic ran in Austria was planned months ago for a dry Spa. Nobody planned for a wet Spa where removing the FTM creates a safety problem, not a performance one. Hamilton is fully aware of what the configuration change means. He said before Spa, "I've got to do a better job than I did at Silverstone." He won the sprint pole at Silverstone. He was third in the race, behind Leclerc and Russell. The SF26, without the FTM, will behave differently through the corners he knows better than anyone, particularly Eau Rouge, which at 2026 speeds requires total commitment and absolute rear-end stability. Here is the specific detail that makes this more than a general setup concern. In Austria, FP1, when Beganovic was running comparison tests without the FTM, Hamilton was in the other car, running with the FTM fitted. The data Ferrari collected was Beganovic's data. Hamilton has never personally driven the SF26 without the flick-tail mode fitted in any session, practice, or race. He arrives in Spa with the device being removed from his car and zero first-hand knowledge of how it feels without it. Every corner reference Hamilton has built this season, Bahrain, Saudi, China, Miami, Monaco, Barcelona, Canada, Austria, Silverstone, was built with the FTM generating downforce at the rear. His instincts for where the rear of the car is, how committed he can be through Eau Rouge, how much he can push through Pouhon, all of that was built with a car that had more rear stability than the car he will drive this Friday. Hamilton has won at Spa 5 times. Only Michael Schumacher has won there more, with 6. One more Spa win equals the record. The record everyone has been talking about this week is sitting one Sunday away, but the car arriving in the Ardennes this Friday is not the same car that took sprint pole at Silverstone. It is missing 7 horsepower of effective downforce at the rear, by design, in preparation for dry straight-line battles that may not materialize if the Ardennes delivers what its forecasts promise. And here is what makes this specific to Hamilton rather than just a Ferrari problem. He has more wet Spa experience than any driver on the grid. 0 competitive wet sessions in the 2026 cars all season. No driver has wet reference data in these regulations. Hamilton's instincts at this circuit in these conditions, built over 15 years, do not disappear because the exhaust configuration changed. But if Ferrari are reconfiguring the car at the last minute on Friday morning because the rain arrived, the engineering uncertainty complicates an advantage that is supposed to be automatic. Hamilton is 32 points behind Antonelli. This is the last race before the summer break. If the dry weather holds and Ferrari's FTM removal works as planned, they are competitive on the straights. Hamilton uses his circuit knowledge through the corners, and Spa rewards the SF26's chassis strength. The gap going into the summer could narrow. A win or a second, with Antonelli finishing 4th or lower, makes this a title fight that arrives back in September genuinely alive. If the rain comes and Ferrari spend Friday and Saturday scrambling between configurations, refitting the FTM, losing the straight-line speed gain, trying to build a wet setup on a car that has had its rear aerodynamic balance changed 2 days before the race, Mercedes will control the weekend. Antonelli or Russell leads from the front in wet conditions where Ferrari's engineers are working reactively rather than from a planned baseline. Ferrari's gamble was rational. The Beganovic data was real. Serra made the right call for a dry Spa, but Formula One does not run at Spa in the conditions it plans for. It runs in whatever the Ardennes delivers. And what the Ardennes is currently promising is rain. Subscribe when free practice data comes through on Friday, the FTM question gets answered in real time. That video drops Friday evening. Be here for it. Was Serra's call right? And if it rains on Sunday, does Ferrari's decision to remove the FTM cost Hamilton the points he cannot afford to lose before the summer break? Give me your specific weather and points calculation in the comments.